Trithereon teaches us all deserve life and ability to choose their own place in the world. And those who would place others in shackles or control them with the oppressive laws must be toppled. Train the common folk to defend themselves and their property should another wish to take their freedoms. If you are wronged, you are right to exact vengeance to yourself, especially if none will help you. Would you allow nobles in their pockets in exchange for risking the lives of hard-working people of Verbobonc? Those nobles that exploit their power at the expense of the common man, particularly House Gallons, House Hacks, and House Longmare. The Viscount has ordered the mounted borderers away from the southern borders. Now orcs and black-hearted brigands raid and pillage and rape from the gnarly forest. The gnomes can't be trusted and deny us needed trade from the Kron Hills. The agents of the Evil One is on the move, and when will we find them on our borders? At our gates? It is every hard-working, God-fearing human to defend his home, his family, his friends. Pick up swords, shield, spear, bow. Train hard in their use of warfare. Do not make the mistake of relying on the government to defend us from the hordes of the evil on the march. Form militias. Pursue and root out evil from the countryside, from our very streets. Do not allow the laws of the Viscount and the strict, ineffectual laws of the other gods. The Cutherbitians are far too rigid and comfortable with their power to be truly an effective force for justice in Verbobonc. Those very laws allow bastard orcs into our city, that allow treasonous gnomes to stay within our fair city. We must take matters into our own hands. Do not settle for nothing short of capital punishment. The crowd erupts in cheers, pounding fists, stomping feet, and you hear shouts peal out through the crowd. Hello, this is David with the Three Arcs channel. Today we're going to talk about Session 1 with the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. We started the background and starting locations of each of the players of the group. We had a fighter named Vigon that started over at the Wild Coast and ended up in the City of Verbobonc. Then we had Mascus the Wizard that started from the City of Verbobonc in the Wrinkle Academy. He attended the School of Magic there, and Ulbahar, the Magister there, sent him on a mission. And then we have another character, which is a half-orc ranger from the Gnarly Forest that was sent here on a mission to seek assistance and find out what's going on with the Viscounty and why there's so much trouble in the Viscounty and the Gnarly Forest. Then we have the Cleric of Pelor, who grew up here in the City of Verbobonc at the Chapel of Pelor. And he was given a quest to find out what Lady Elinor needed for her Noble Quest series, called Noble Ambitions. Noble Ambitions is a Living Greyhawk module from the Living Greyhawk series that starts the entire campaign off in the year 594 Common Year and continues all the way to the year 598 Common Year over the 10 years that Living Greyhawk existed back in the 2000s. But I went ahead and rewrote it to fit the 576 Common Year, which is the starter campaign for the Temple of Elemental Evil that so many DMs over the years ran for their players since the 80s. I used a lot of material to put my campaign together. It took about 4 years to put this all into World Anvil so I can use it at my tabletop. And some of the source material I used for this campaign was from Goodman Games, which is their box set for the Temple of Elemental Evil, T1 through 4. It comes with 2 boxes. It has the original module in here and a couple different versions and the new 5th edition versions that they wrote. I don't run this in 5th edition, but some of the material they did write for this module is very useful for the campaign. Some of the descriptions they wrote, some of the artwork they used, and they actually added a few more encounters and NPCs to the campaign, which I took for my campaign, which worked out really well. Verbobonc! Verbobonc. This is my ukulele that I like to play. I've been trying to learn how to play, but after practicing for a couple days, my hand started to cramp up, and it hurt really bad, so I had to stop. But my intention was to play this sometimes during the campaign. I've learned about 5 chords so far. That's about it. My other video, I have Relma sing the Verbobonc song for me, so that way the players can hear that at a tavern. I also have a couple other videos I did for the prophecies of the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. I'll show that video to the players when they get to that point. when they come across the prophecy to the temple itself. And also there's a song that a bard will sing at one of the taverns for the Battle of Emerald Meadows. This artwork I have here up on the screen is from the video game, but I like the demon picture, so I put that as a capstone of all my campaign material. And as you can see in the background, I have all these original modules. I have a whole library full of them, and I've been painting miniatures and printing them with my 3D printer, and I'm collecting all the original D&D dice. Some of these are my original, and others I procured over the years. D&D had a huge impact on my life. I started playing in grade school after Star Wars came out in 1977, where I started a gaming club that led to D&D. At the time, I would be found in the classroom, keeping my head low, buried in a fantasy book. The D&D Blue Box set changed and consumed my life. Quickly after that, I bought the AD&D Player's Handbook by Gary Gygax, which had a massive influence on me. I highly recommend these books to read. Rise of the Dungeon Master, Gary Gygax and the Creation of D&D by David Kushner and Corinne Sadmi. This graphic novel is a quick read, and it is a brief glimpse into the life of Gary Gygax, the creation of D&D, the controversy, and the effects that the game had on pop culture and many lives that it touched. The next book is Empire of Imagination, Gary Gygax and the Birth of Dungeons & Dragons by Michael Whitwer. I found that this biography is a series of fictional vignettes about events in Gary Gygax's life, loosely connected by nods at context, which is more of a inspired by true events story than an actual biography. And the last one is Of Dice and Men, the story of Dungeons & Dragons and the people who play it by David Ewalt. This was a fun read about the history of Dungeons & Dragons. The author injects that some scenes from one of his own D&D campaign, which I liked, but sometimes it strayed a little bit too far from the subject and covered a lot other role-playing games. I was really happy to identify with a lot of the scenes in this book, and not just from playing the game. You can find my affiliate links down below. So back to the Noble Ambitions module from Living Greyhawk. I went ahead and I took that module and I rewrote it to fit the year 594 Common Year, with the intentions of starting the players off at the City of Verbobonc. So in my previous videos, I created background for the characters on why and how they got to the City of Verbobonc to get together for the first time. In my other videos, I actually role-played separately with each player before meeting here at the beginning of this module. So I gave them some leads and some story hooks, campaign hooks to their characters before they even get together. The idea here is to get them more engaged into the campaign and bring more to the table, so when they finally do role-play together, they have something to contribute, information that only they know. This will prompt the players to role-play more, to actually share information, versus just a dungeon master spouting information to the whole group as a whole. I like the idea of giving each player information so they can share it with other players when it comes to role-playing. And I do award experience points for role-playing in my campaign. The way I do it is it's 100 experience points per level per session is the maximum amount of experience points I'll award. I do give them half the experience points for just showing up in time. Then the other half is not how good they role play, but how much they try, how much they attempt to do it. I want to see them try role playing and be engaged in the campaign. And if they're just going to sit there on their cell phone and not be engaged, then they're not going to get the other half of the experience points. So that's the reasoning behind that. And there's also a side reason to help get them get along leveling, because you know, if you're running Old School Essentials or you're running Castles and Crusades or AD&D, they level fairly slowly. And you really need to get the players to 5th level before they even enter the Temple of Elemental Evil. So that's another reason why I'm starting them off at the City of Greyhawk and give them a starter quest with Lady Elinor. Hopefully this module will get them to 2nd level, and then point them south along the Merchant Road into the Viscounty to the Village of Hommlet and onwards. And I have all these different outposts and different storylines and plots going on in the area to engage these players to get them up to 5th level. Okay, I hinted at this adventure several times in my videos in the past, that the whole campaign starts, which is God's Day, readying the 4th, the year 594 Common Year. And part of their backgrounds describes the day, how the city is crawling with crowds. It's push and shove down the streets. All the visitors and diplomats and merchants from out of the city have come to the city for high holy days to visit all the chapels and to participate in the sermons and the services being offered and the recruitment of all these gods in these churches. As the players get around the city on these different quests I set them on, they get to see a wide variety of the people of the Flanaess. and also the things that are going on, especially with the problems with the gnomes and the humans in the city of Verbobonc. Because right now the gnomes are being pushed out. They don't feel like they're wanted. And they also feel like the nobles are trying to steal all their silver and gem mines in the Cron Hills. Because the Viscount pulled back all the patrols of the mounted borderers along the Cron Hill border. And so they're no longer protecting the gnomes and their merchant caravans. And so now they're swearing that they're going to go ahead and stop all trade with the city of Verbobonc and send their trade elsewhere to like Hewland and Ulick and the city of Divers. Prince Jim and the dignitary from the Cron Hills, the Free Assembly of Gnomes, they are on the Council of Lords. They're constantly arguing in session with the other lords, with the Viscount, and a lot of politics are going on. And not just the lords of the land, but also all the bishops of all the priesthoods in the city and the land itself. Right now, the Church of St. Cuthbert is number one. They're the official state religion of the city of Verbobonc. And all the other faiths out there are trying to vie for position as well. And it's a constant push and pull and tugging of all these different forces, these organizations in the land that's happening in the Viscounty. And mixing all that, stirring up the pot, is agents of the Temple of Elemental Evil. And in today's session, session 1, you're going to see a couple of these people here at the meeting. They're spying on the characters, or they're spying on Lady Elinor, rather, to find out what she's up to. So at the beginning of the campaign, I have the campaign start that you can see on the screen. And on the right-hand side, I always put notes for role-playing. As you can see on my screen here on the right, House Asbury, the domain, her responses to certain questions when it comes to role-playing. If they ask her about marriage or how dissatisfied she is with some of the other nobles in the city, I'll have some canned responses ready to go. On finding a husband for marriage, on her riding outfit, what makes her happy, her comment on friendship, her opinion on people that lie, things like that. So back up, we start with the approach to Jylees Inn. Now, as you know, in the other videos, all the players ended up at the end of that session, session 0, approaching Jylees Inn. They all have a notice in hand that they received in various ways. Mascus received his notice from the Magister of the Wrinkle Academy, telling him to come and investigate to find out what Lady Elinor wants. Heinrich, the cleric of Pelor, his master, the Archbishop of Pelor there in the city, gave him also this notice to have him go investigate to see what Lady Elinor wants and needs. Because they're all, like I said before, all that politics are going on. The bishops are highly interested in anything the lords are up to. And of course, you have the half-orc ranger from the Gnarly Forest, Urad. He actually found his notice over at the Adventurers Guild. He thought, wow, maybe this is something that can get me some attention or information from one of the lords of the land. Because right now he does not have an ear of the council or the Viscount, and the only way to get more information is the best way to get information, he figured, is from one of the lords. And now that one of the lords needs help, he's going to go find out what that is and help them. And then we got Vigon. Vigon is staying at the same inn as Urad is, the Packard's Inn, which is an inn for mercenaries, and it's very dangerous there. A lot of bad people stay there as well. And he got his notice from the Adventurers Guild as well. So they're going together to Jylees Inn. And the first thing we have a description of is when I start session 1 off, we start off with an encounter before they get to Jylees Inn. Like I said before, whenever the parties are moving around the city of Verbobonc, I try to add some content. I try to add some to show the players what's going on in the campaign. I want to give them information of what's going on with the politics and the churches of the city, of the crowds, of the people there, what they think, the lords, the cobwalkers, which is the guards that roam the city. All these things I'm constantly providing them, these short little descriptions of what they see as they move through the city. Like a view of Greyfist Castle, which has elven architecture where the Viscount stays and his royal guard. Another view would be the Cathedral of Trithereon. As they travel through the city down Bridgewalk Boulevard to the Temple District, which is Civic Plaza where Jylees Inn is, they have to pass the Cathedral of Trithereon. And since it's God's Day, they're the loudest and biggest cathedral of the entire city. They have their event outdoors in their courtyard. So it's really hard to miss as you pass. And so we have this thing going on that the party is going to witness as they travel through this to get to their destination. And so what they see is a description here on the map. I show them the picture. As you see on the map, I show them the picture here in the map of what the cathedral looks like as they pass by. And then I describe to them that the temple doors are pure gold. It's 2 stories high with elaborate friezes portraying the gods that founded and protect the city. a little bit of background of the city. I want to try to constantly provide characters information into the campaign. There's bright gems and sections of polished silver that enhance the richness of the doors. The walls that flank them are stark, finely polished white marble, rising 30 feet to golden roof with elaborate vines and decorations visible up along the edge. The Temple of Trithereon is built of durable stone and is well capable to resist attack. They are always built with an eye for defense and contains a massive bell tower from which the faithful can be called to worship. And it's been ringing all day long. In fact, I waked up some of the parties up with that ringing. And the cleric of Pelor, Heinrich, is a little bit irritated because when he woke up, he heard his chapel bells ringing, but ringing louder in the distance is the temple of the Cathedral of Trithereon. So that is the basic description of the Cathedral of Trithereon whenever they walk past it. But something's happening right now. So we'll skip by the description of what it looks like inside. And what's happening on the outside is a celebration in the square. The temple square is open and paved. It's about 350 feet long on each side. Normally, you see a few internet merchants in the center selling their wares, but not today. Today is filled with people, hundreds, maybe thousands, packed into the square with more arriving all the time. The gongs, there's several of them with different tones, keep a steady cadence that builds anticipation. More people press in behind you. The square is so crowded that it's very hard to see. So the party is trying to push their way through the crowd. And as I let them start to push their way through, something happens. Suddenly, there's a change in the sounds. Drums and horns join the bell-like tones of the gongs. The 2-story golden doors on the massive cathedral open, and a cloud of incense billows out, heralding the procession. Priests and priestesses, their raiment varied and colorful, they march out. The costumes of those in the procession are lavish and vibrant. Armed priests of Trithereon wear purple or dark blue robes, trimmed with silver or gold. Marching out with the cathedral, the priests are parading new converts, known as hopeful initiates, to the faith, displaying of weaponry of maces and heavy armor, chain and plate. So the party is still trying to push their way through the crowd. They're getting further along. They notice that the procession moves forward. The crowd parts as the procession moves down the wide pink marble stairs of the cathedral into the planar stone of the square. The participants step forward together, making a war rhythm against the chaos of the horns and the bells. On all sides, the devout throw themselves onto the pavement in prayer and thanksgiving. Others kneel. Others chant with the priest. A few stand by simply watching. The procession descends from the temple and crosses most of the square before the last celebrants emerge from the temple. There must be more than 100 priests, priestesses, and drummers. Then the party knows that the people in the square are joining the procession. It lengthens as it goes. The priests lead the way across the square, turns and circle at once, and then take a presiding stance at the middle of the square. A high priest wearing dark blue robes trimmed with gold strides forth and presents a sermon to the crowd, raising his mace, erupts in flame that soars into the sky, silencing the crowded square. Okay, so now we're going to describe the parade as the party is still trying to shove their way through a crowd that's not moving. You know that the parading of new converts, they're known as the hopeful initiates to the faith, displays weaponry and veneration of ceremonial flames. On God's day, the ceremony and ringing of bells performed every hour on the hour from morning until midnight. Then you hear the high priest yell out, "Trithereon teaches us all deserve life and ability to choose their own place in the world. And those who would place others in shackles or control them with the oppressive laws must be toppled. Train the common folk to defend themselves and their property should another wish to take their freedoms. If you are wronged, you are right to exact vengeance to yourself, especially if none will help you. Would you allow nobles in their pockets in exchange for risking the lives of hard-working people of Verbobonc? Those nobles that exploit their power at the expense of the common man, particularly House Gallons, House Hacks, and House Longmare.
The Viscount has ordered the mounted borderers away from the southern borders. Now orcs and black-hearted brigands raid and pillage and rape from the gnarly forest. The gnomes can't be trusted and deny us needed trade from the Cron Hills. The agents of the Evil One is on the move, and when will we find them on our borders? At our gates? It is every hard-working, God-fearing human to defend his home, his family, his friends. Pick up swords, shield, spear, bow. Train hard in their use of warfare. Do not make the mistake of relying on the government to defend us from the hordes of the evil on the march. Form militias. Pursue and root out evil from the countryside, from our very streets. Do not allow the laws of the Viscount and the strict, ineffectual laws of the other gods. The Cutherbitines are far too rigid and comfortable with their power to truly be an effective force for justice in Verbobonc. Those very laws allow bastard orcs into our city, that allow treasonous gnomes to stay within our fair city. We must take matters into our own hands. Do not settle for nothing short of capital punishment. The crowd erupts in cheers, pounding fists, stomping feet, and you hear shouts peal out through the crowd. We do need to take matters into our own hands. And others will yell, why won't the gnomes leave? I say we send them packing into the Cron Hills. The nobles only care about their pockets. We should take the Cron Hills and mines from the gnomes. Things like that. So basically, at that moment, the entire square erupts into chaos. Armed mobs start to be led off by the priest off into the city, hunting down gnomes. Dozens and dozens of new recruits are joining the ranks of the god of Saint. Dozens and dozens of new recruits are joining the Church of Trithereon with this staged outburst, this staged speech, which is very slanderous to the lords and the Viscount himself. They're very, very upset with the Church of Trithereon for stirring up so much trouble, and they always have their hands full dealing with them. But they are so important in the city, there's not much they can do. All they can do is minimize the chaos. So the party, learning this in the campaign, which is huge, really, especially if one of the players is a cleric of Trithereon or paladin, but they will encounter members of that church sooner or later in the campaign, and it's actually a couple modules based on it. So this is great groundwork, foundation for what it's like to live here in the city of Verbobonc and the powers that are at play. So we're going to go back to the module. They finally get to Jylees, the court, the civic court. So they enter the community square. It's a broad, opened area, some 300 feet on the side. This plaza is wide open with no statues, benches, or other features to get in the way of the worshippers. And it is dominated by the city hall at the upper end. The stonework of the pavement is handsome, with geometric patterns and several types of gold stone. The Verbobonc City Hall is a large square building of a golden limestone, 3 stories high, with a crenellated parapet surrounding the roof, that contains the offices of the Lord Mayor of Verbobonc and other important city officials. In the corner of the building, there's a tower, a 155-foot tall tower of white stone. It's called the Ragosa. The other buildings in the square are well made and old, of gray stone softened by time. They have stone steps, windows, all wooden shutters held together by attractive metal work. The doors are likewise found fine old wood with hanging signs indicating inns and shops and academies and chapels. It's fully keyed, as you know from looking at my other videos here. Plainly dressed clerics and officials can be seen coming and going during working hours, and the players will see this. Cobwalkers patrol the square in numbers. Remember, Cobwalkers is the city guard, and half the time a Cobwalker consists of a priest of St. Cuthbert, a billet, with his cudgel, and they're very uncompromising. You don't want to get into trouble by them; they will not let you go. So also, there's trouble. They're keeping an eye out for troublemakers and pickpockets, and pointing out directions and answering questions. Most days, a few wandering merchants throw down a blanket and offer jewelry or religious tokens for sale or trade. Beggars are in this area, hoping for handouts from worshippers. This location used for political rallies and speeches, etc. So the players get a good idea of what the square is all about. in one paragraph. Next, I give a little bit of flavor of life here. If I feel like I'm running out of time or attention, I'll skip this, but I always like to add a flavor of life. And this is near one of the taverns. You see a small boy standing among a group of Viscounty soldiers. They are eating hard bread and jerky they just bought from a nearby market stand. The boy, obviously hungry and poor, moves around like a small mouse. He's grabbing bits of bread that the soldiers drop on the ground. It's hard to feel sorry for the boy, however, because you can see that the fierce determination in his green eyes as he pilfers the small morsels. The sounds of the place are almost deafening. Hawkers are yelling directions to the traders' market, the docks and various priests pointing out chapels, children running and laughing, and groups of people talking all at once. All these sounds assault your ears as you make your way across the square. As much as the city market's place has to offer, you're still anxious to buy what you need and make your way to your destination. Or go to your destination is what the players are doing. All right, so finally, they get to Jylees Inn. So real quick, I'll show you a picture of Jylees. That's inside. So the location of the city square, just to explain to you, is by the south gate. So I'll zoom in a little bit. C2 is the Civic building. And C3 is Jylees Inn. And there's all these other buildings around the square. Okay, before I go back to the module, this is what's hanging over the inn itself, these banners. So I'll refer to this during the description here. It is known that Jylees Inn is a well-appointed hostelry that caters to nobility and wealthy merchants and one of the finest in Verbobonc. The players that live there know this. That's why I tell them that. And I don't really care if the other players... And the other players probably heard of this too, just hanging out in the city over at the Adventurers Guild. They probably asked that question, when they found out they needed to go here, and people in the area actually mentioned it. But Jylees Inn is a beautifully maintained building of stone and wood construction near the west gate. Well, actually, it's supposed to be the south gate. The stonework has been lovingly whitewashed, with wood trim is painted in excellent repair. It raises some 3 stories above the wide road and screened from the dust and noise by a line of topperary plum trees. Along the peak of the inn's roof are 5 banners fluttering bravely in the morning breeze. And that's that picture I showed you earlier. So at this point at the party, I know I'm just reading this to you guys on the video here, but during all this, I'm always interacting with the party. I'm asking them questions, what they want to do. I'm responding to their questions. And then I move along. With my, script or module, I guess is what you could call it. So at this point, they'll probably ask questions about the banner. So at that point, I'll either just tell somebody I think would know about it or have them roll a knowledge check for heraldry of Verbobonc, Veluna, or Firandi. If it's 3rd edition D&D, it would be a DC 10. But if it's any other edition, I'll be like a difficult roll. So it'll be like a -5, +5, whatever system you're using. So the knowledge score will tell the party that the banners, who the nobles are. So this is what the nobles are here. The first one is the most worthy Sir Harold Viceroy, Knight Companion of the Shield, Veluna. Second one is Sir Roth Townshend, Knight of the Heart of Firandi. The third is His Worship, Olin Deloitte, Emissary of Rayo in Veluna. The next one is Baroness Elinor Asbury, Mistress of House Asbury of Verbobonc. And the last one is Lord Sir Simon Melinius. He's the Master of House Melinius of Verbobonc. So as you approach the inn, this thin, nasally doorman wears yellow tunic with a Jylee crest. He greets the party.
What business do you have at our fine inn?
He's snooty. Just like in that movie, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So he waits for a response. Upon hearing that they wish to speak with Lady Elinor of House Asbury, he will look at them with an appraising eye. Turning, he calls out to one of the 2 large men stationed at either side of the entry door. So I'm going to give them a hard time at this point right here. So he's going to ask them questions like,
Who are you? Where do you think you're going? I'm very busy here. Why don't you head back to the docks?
He wants to get rid of them. Obviously, the riffraff. If they're adventurers, they're like especially Urad from the Gnarly Forest. He looks like a forester, a wanderer. The Vigon looks like a mercenary, And they definitely don't have no business here because this is where usually nobles stay or rich merchants. And they definitely do not look like either. So this is where the priest might shine or the wizard because they're on official business from the archbishop and the magister himself. So they can step up and make their way into here. They can get permission to pass the doorway. Also, what could happen is the party will show the doorman the notice from Lady Elinor that they're looking for people to help them. So there's ways to get past this doorman, but it gives a vibe to the place.
Take this or these persons to the audience room set aside for Lady Elinor Asbury.
Then he turns back to you.
Please follow this man, and please refrain from questions or commotion. It is our honor to accommodate the Lady Elinor, but we must insist that other guests are not to be disturbed.
So he lets them through. The guards lead them through the place. So as soon as they walk through the door, you are swiftly escorted into the inn. No expense has been spared in decorating. The floor is a special glittering marble quarried in the Lort mills. I could mention that to maybe the dwarf. The furniture is also of local make, using only the finest oak and made of the master craftsmen of Oakham, which is another little tiny hook of what Oakham has to offer in the Viscounty over in the Gnarly Forest. The ceiling is low, but the woodwork is incredibly intricate, portraying many scenes from the local history as well as some of the Flanaess's colorful personages and their tales. The dishes and utensils are of the finest silver. No one needs to examine the intricate filigree of the silver candlesticks lighting the entrance of this inn, nor touch the cushioning of the plush velvet upholstery adorning the many overstuffed seats within. You are quite aware of the extravagance and the probable cost of staying at such an establishment. The eyes of the uniformed staff and well-dressed guests critically judge you by the dust of the road on your boots and clothing. The inn itself is packed. Nobles and rich merchants seem to be primary clientele here, which is probably the best clientele for the owner. Several long tables are occupied by what looks like nobles, lone travelers, and anybody else who enjoys great company. The other smaller tables are also occupied by rich merchants and entertaining and discussing. They're doing business here. Even most of the stools at the bar are occupied, though nobody seems to mind more company. At this point, the party, I'm going to mention to the party they see two people that are close to the door they're going to at one of the tables, and they kind of stand out, so I'll mention this to them. And these are very important NPCs in this campaign. I mentioned this many times in my videos, but I never actually talked about details about who's really behind the Temple of Elemental Evil, who's assisting them here in the City of Verbobonc. And these are two of them. So here we go. Jylees Inn Lord Bridgeworth and Master Quallid. This is what they see as the party walks past the table. One such table near the door to where they're led to is a pair of men in deep discussion. One is soft-spoken and speaks non-stop, as he rather likes the sound of his own voice. Kind of like me. His demeanor is of assumed authority of a noble. He is splendid in the riches of clothing with little regard to weather. That's a good sign of a noble right there. His companion has a sharp demeanor of a wealthy merchant that is entertaining his new friend. He seems to miss nothing, sizing up each of your party as you are escorted across the room. He seems interested in who enters that room. So I'll say this to one of the party members. I don't know, it depends on the kind of game you run. There might be a wisdom check or something, but usually I'll kind of point this information out to somebody I think will be more interested in noticing something like this. Somebody more capable. You know, different character classes and races in a group have different interests. You know, like wizards, they always focus on arcane matters, clerics, divine matters. Rogues always size up people, a mark, like how much gold they have, where their belt pouch is located at, what weapons. A warrior is usually more focused on the fighting capability of somebody they're looking at. So everybody has their own reasons and why and what they notice about something when they're looking at somebody. So I usually think about this whenever I describe anything to the party, and I'll point that information to that party, that member. And if I think it's something that's really hard to notice, then I'll have them make a roll, a skill check roll, which is usually a charisma or a wisdom check. Okay, so you hear a few. So that to that person that I just talked about, I say as you walk by, you hear some words. You know, you can barely hear them talking as you walk by. You hear words like introductions, words like court rumors and third-party discussions and other dignitaries. You hear a mention of ambassadors and lords. That's vaguely what you hear as you walk by, and then all of a sudden you're at the door. So I also have I also have two descriptions here of introductions. So if the party actually decides to ask somebody about those two, I have some information to share with them. I have some vague information to share with that person about who those two people are, but not too much information. I don't want the party to know that they're actually agents of the Temple of Elemental Evil right away. Okay. So now we're going to get to the meeting room. Continue with the campaign. You are led across this massive room to a set of double-carved wooden doors. Your escort opens them carefully and ushers you into a room with a score of others. It's rich, polished wood panels and beams. A great polished ip-wood table dominates the long chamber. Porcelain plates gleam, and silver servingware placed out of the way on a side table glitters in the warm light of several candelabras. The high-backed chairs around the table bear similar carvings, but each is unique. No food seems to be on the table yet, but a crystal bottle containing a dark red liquid stands uncorked. As for the others that you've already seen here before you got here, there's an elf. An elf stylizes himself as a wizard, but you doubt much is written in that impressive thick tome under his arm. The human has dressed herself in fancy leathers and a flounchy shirt that belongs on stage, not on the street. A portly kilt-wearing dwarf rounds out the group. Quite literally, he's round. He bellows loudly.
This hut for be crackin' pie eating reward, or my cherubic nature kin wearing melancholy.
A beautiful young woman is seated on a rather plain chair that sits upon a raised dais. On her right, an aged, tall man, gray and scarred with Knights of Sigil of House Asbury, emblazoned over his jacket. He leans against a writing stand. The only other exit from the room is a door guarded by a handsome page whose clothing is adorned with the Asbury coat of arms. As the last adventurer enters, the woman rises. She nods to your escort. She is elegant, exhibiting unconstrained bravery as she speaks. Thank you, Bertram. Please allow no others entry until I have had opportunity to speak to those assembled. The escort bows deeply to her and replies, As you wish, your prominence. He exits and closes the door behind him. Once the door closes, Lady Elinor studies those in the room for a moment, and then she speaks. I thank you all for answering my summons. I am Lady Elinor Asbury of House Asbury, a small holding in South Verbobonc in the township of Penwick. I hast need for a brave few of singular abilities who would complete a task. The success of this endeavor would be critical for the continued survival of House Asbury. I ask your indulgence in answering a few questions before I select those who will be charged to undertake the quest. The nature of this quest is a secret, and I must stipulate that I am not, as of yet, reveal any of the details said task. However, those who will be asked to take the service with House Asbury will be privy to all that I know before I accept their pledge. Sir Amant, please. With this said, she glances to the elderly man who now holds a stylist. He motions to the dwarf dressed in the chainmail and speaks. Please step forward, give your name, your homeland, and then state the reason that House Asbury should accept your service. At this point, I can improv. The questioning of several of the NPCs to demonstrate their behavior and attitude expected from the applicants. Any players that watch Lady Elinor will notice that any breach of courtesy or an expression of greed brings a disapproving look from her face. They may notice that every time she frowns, she raises her index finger slightly over her left hand. That character also notices that her aged knight is on constant vigil for that sign. And any interview that he is conducting will soon be over once that sign is given. Each player will have the opportunity to step forward and speak. At this point, to get the ball rolling, I'll have one of the NPCs make their interview first to get the players an idea what's expected to them, and also to show them that finger. I will only tell one or two of the players, like with a secret note, of what they noticed with her signal to Sir Armand. That way, they can maybe share that information in role-playing terms to the rest of the party if they want to, or they don't have to. Okay, so the first one comes up is the dwarf, the big round dwarf. He goes,
Aye, mistress. Me saws me wet belt from Iron Delve. I see you look at me in a proper kilt and swinging hammer. I'm not no cow-eyed local like this laddie swooning over the damsel in distress act that you are going on. Seems handy with a sword, but about as subtle as an addle-pated ogre. He's a solid enough lad, and he'll be making a proper meat shield. As for this elf, would end up as troll poo. In less than a week, this tall drink of a girl is right poofy. I would climb that spook's chicken. I will never keen lion stridus. How about this secret you talk about? I don't know what you're playing at, or I'm a goblin's uncle. Unless you tell me exactly what you want, lass, I ain't going nowhere.
So that starts off the whole entire interview. Him right off the bat, this completely over the top interview. So you notice that a small detail in Lady Elinor's response. When the dwarf finishes his introduction and questions, I'll briefly describe that Sir Armand will dismiss him immediately. But to the players that do notice such things, what really is going on here, I'll describe the following. You notice a small detail in Lady Elinor's response. When the dwarf finished his introduction and questions, you can discern unpleasantness in her eyes and a slight frown of expression. She then raises her index finger slightly over her left hand. Now that you look, the aged knight is in constant vigil for that sign. He notates on his parchment and concludes the interview by saying, "That is enough. You may take your place with the others." At that point, I'll have one of the players present their interview. He will state his name and purpose and where he's from. And then I'll have another of the NPCs go forward. Then I'll have Armand call one of the other NPCs to come forward to be interviewed. And this will be the Elven Wizard.
Greetings, and long life, Baroness Elinor Asbury. I am called Volman Wainahana from the Elven Conclave here in Verbobonc. I have recently completed my apprenticeship at the Silver Consortium. My studies of the arcane would prove of value to your endeavor, your prominence. All rewards and pay is under contract with the Silver Consortium, as I am their agent in this matter. All items recovered in such a venture must be remanded into the Consortium's care until they have deemed of value.
At that moment, the Elven Mage looks over each of you, then continues.
Also, I do not care to travel with any back alley wrinkle wizards, dwarves, or unwashed humans from the docks. Members of the Academy has their standards to uphold.
So the party gets pretty upset with this. And then Lady Asbury lifts her finger, and Sir Armand notates his ledger and then asks for the next person to present themselves, which will probably be another player. And when the players introduce themselves, I'm not going to have her lift a finger and disapprove of them unless they're really bad. If they show any sign of greed or if they show any sign of greed or anything like that, like I described before, and then she's going to not like them and dismiss them.
Oi, Heathy, the nimble from Verbobonc. Quick with the dirk. Quick with the dirk and uncatchable. Ask anyone down at the Electrum Inn. These days, it's a prosperous time. I want no trouble, and those smelly fish hands can't get a handle on me. I just want to know one thing. When and how much you're paying before we leave the city. I have obligations to take care of first. Also, what's the crank with you? The only climbing this smelly fat dwarf will be up my duck, and that's the end of it.
So she shows her greed and her anger, her uncouthness, and Lady Elinor will raise her finger and dismiss her too, of course. So the rest of the party finally introduces themselves at this point. And then she'll stand up. Lady Elinor will arise. I thank you all for coming and ask your patience. Please allow me to offer some simple refreshments while I consult Armand and make my decision. Jarek? The page stationed near the side door will open it, revealing an anteroom with several tables bearing ale, wine, cheese, and other refreshments. So I'll ask the party if they wish to follow the page into the room and wait. And as they file out, if they have any questions at this moment, Armand and Lady Elinor will totally ignore them. But as they file out of the room, something happens. The main door to the audience chamber opens, and the doorman enters the room and bows deeply. Lady Elinor, I beg your pardon, but Lord Millennius requests an immediate audience with you. Lady Elinor's mouth tightens as he turns to regard the man.
Please tell the Lord of House Millennius that I am flattered by his interest and will be most honored to receive him once my business here is concluded.
At that point, the usher, he bows again and leaves the room, and then she exits the room as well. At this point, the page ushers the entire party into the room, and they're there for a while. So I'll let them drink and eat and talk to the NPCs too, to learn more about the city, about why they're there, and rumors and all sorts of things like that, and share also among themselves what they experienced in the city so far in this campaign, like all that sessions Euro I conducted. And so this is a good time for the party to finally meet and talk in private. So then after about an hour, Lady Asbury's page will reappear and then call them out to the room. So they call out their names and they wait to each answer. Upon hearing the reply, he will ask them to return to the audience room. So only the people he called out can go into the audience room with him, which is just the party. He does not call out the NPCs. When they get back to the room, they see the room has been rearranged. Chairs, sufficient for the number of PCs, have been placed in a semicircle facing the dais. Armand steps forward and officially proclaims,
Approach and present yourselves to Baroness Elinor Tresgard Asbury, Ambassador of the Celestial Circle, Mistress of House Asbury.
Lady Elinor rises from her chair and invites each of you to sit before her. Then she herself will sit.
Of what I'm about to tell you, some is known. The rest must remain secret. Do I have your word on that?
She waits for each of the players to agree. She ignores any questions. Yeah, sometimes the party will ask questions, and I'll just say she stares at them stoically, waiting for them to agree. Then she continues with her tale.
12 years ago, an unspeakable evil fell upon the lands to the south. A dark fortress was raised, and from its gates belched forth a host of despoilers. Asbury Manor lay in their path. My father, Lord Asbury, and Lady Aluna, my mother, realized that they did not possess the might to defeat or turn aside that tide of evil. But they also acknowledged that their solemn duty was to those who looked for Asbury for protection. Summoning their landmen, they bade them to gather, and they would carry and flee with their families what they could carry to the north to Verbobonc City, where a mustering of forces has been called to meet the threat. Myself, a mere babe, carried in Armand's arms. My parents donned armor and led those 10 men and women. At arms who had claimed their right to stand beside my father. They met the horde at the bridge spanning Whistler's Creek, where after destroying the span, held the crossing for 10 violent hours, allowing many of the people to gain safety before they were swept aside like leaves before the cold autumn wind. They met the horde at the bridge spanning Whistler's Creek. Okay, skip. Later, as you all well know, the combined forces of good destroyed the festering evil and cauterized the source. The solid folk of Asbury returned to try to rebuild their homes and farms. They asked Armand to serve as regent until I was of age. They asked They asked Armand to serve as regent until I was of age to resume the leadership of. They asked Armand to serve as regent until I was of age to resume the leadership of the holding, as I did this years past. But the raising of Penwick's township left the holding poor, not in spirit, determination, nor courage, but in gold. Much of what has been looted from the homes and the manor house has never been recovered. My father's sword was lost, as was the stone of Osbury that my mother wore on a chain around her neck. Sword and stone are symbols of Osbury. Their recovery would much bolster the faith by people at home. In addition, there would be treasury of gems. There was treasury of gems and coin which would alleviate the terrible strain levied upon God damn it. In addition, there was a treasury of gems. In addition, there was treasury of gems and coin, which would alleviate the terrible strain levied upon Osbury. We have to borrow heavily to rebuild, and the cost of that is now due. I cannot ask my people to sacrifice more than they have already. And while I have had offers of assistance, she gives us a wan smile at that. They have different cost. But now to the point. Recently, an old man, half crazed and muttering nonsense, stumbled into the holding. He babbled about a cave filled with riches and gold and guarded by imps of the underworld. Ordinarily, we would pay little heed. There are still many who suffer from the evil that has visited upon the land. But this man bore with him a chalice made of gold and worked with gems. Armand immediately recognized it as one of the two wedding cups gifted to my father and mother at their betrothal by the Lord Mayor of Verbobonc. We gently questioned the man, striving for meaning through his disjointed and sometimes incomprehensible ramblings. We have pieced together enough to send a party in hopes of recovering the treasure and restoring Osbury to its former position. Would that I had men and women of arms, I would lead them as my father led. But the folk of Osbury are farmers and craftsmen, not warriors, and certain political situation requires that I remain in the holding. I ask you to take service under the banner of Osbury, to find if possible the sword and gem of Osbury and the treasure that will save our holding. In return, I offer the eternal gratitude of House Osbury and the praise of bards all through the ages. In addition, if the treasure of Osbury were to be recovered, I would be imparting a sum of coin to each of thee. Mind, though, we are a poor holding, but our heart and love are with that honesty come to our aid. What say you all?
So at this point, the party, of course, has questions. And she defers a lot of those detailed questions away because she needs to accept their pledge first before she'll share the details, because it's highly secretive. And this is an extremely vital mission they're going to be on for the House Osbury. But she does try to provide as much information as she can about the situation of why she's here, but no details of the mission itself. So finally, if the party do decide to take on the mission and pledge to her that they will be faithful in her mission, she will turn to face Armand with a glow of hope reborn in her heart. And she stands. Armand summons each of you to stand before Lady Osbury. She looks at you, her eyes locking onto yours in a fearless gaze. So at this point, I'll have him call each party member out by name, have them come step forward. I'll wait for that party member to agree to step forward and present themselves. And then she'll say to him, "Do you pledge to serve the people and rightful ruler of Osbury until this service is done?" And if they accept that, she turns to Osbury and that holds a stack of folded clothing. Taking the topmost one, she shakes it out and reveals a tabard of blue with worked devices depicting a flaming sword and a sparkling gem. She steps forward to slip the tabard over your head.
I ask that you accept these tokens of House Asbury. Perhaps it is just a passing fancy, but I wish to invoke any luck that I may. These are the tabards worn by the men and women who rode it to hold the bridge with my parents. This much we were able to find and return to good use. Their courage and devotion to their duty is remembered in the hearts of all of House Asbury. It would seem fitting that you would wear them on this quest.
And at that point, I'll ask the party if they put them on. Then I got some notes that as they pledge their oaths, Lady Elinor permits the use of Lady Elinor rather than her prominence. Another thing I have to convey to the party is the way people in this land is positions of power, how nobility works in this land with peasants, titles. And usually when you present yourself to a lord, you would have to call her prominence. That would be her name. Only equals or people important to her are allowed to call her Lady Elinor. To do otherwise would be an insult, and her subordinates would actually persecute you for doing such a thing. So she does finally give them permission to call her Lady Elinor. So she relates. So then at that point, relate the words that the old man chanted over and over again. And this is what she says.
My priest of Rayo at House Asbury transcribed this man's ramblings. I do have a few thoughts on a few passages. It is my belief that the union of deep feeling with profound thought, the fine balance of truth in observing with the imaginative facility in modifying the objects observed, made that you will see what I cannot.
When I have her talk that way, I try to make it realistic. Like, she really is an educated noble, the way she speaks. I did a lot of study on this, on posh English and things like that, so I got a lot of quotes for her to follow. So let's go ahead and take a look at her real quick. So this is what she looks like, and she's a young mistress of House Asbury. She's got honey-colored hair. She grew into a beautiful child blessed with compassion, knowledge, and the heart of Verbobonc. Poised, graceful, with startling intelligence, she appears unconstrained bravery, compassionate, combined with elegance and refinement. In the article of Lady Elinor, I have the entire Asbury history here. And also that's the coat of arms I created for this campaign, which is the flaming sword and the shining gem of Asbury. This history is quite detailed about the House of Asbury. I have another article for the House of Asbury as well. I don't want to go into that into this video, but quickly, such a resource was not overlooked by the noble lordship of Viscount Wilfric. Elinor was recently appointed as Verbobonc's ambassador to Veluna and given appropriate title. The stateswoman that captured the hearts of so many is now Baroness Elinor Tresgard Asbury, ambassador of the Celestial Circle, mistress of House Asbury. Armont still stands by her side as a quiet source of strength. His teachings have led Baroness Elinor to the forefront of Verbobonc's nobility, while his attention to her safety has provided Asbury Manor with a legacy. And there's an entire history of here about how she was raised and her family and where they came from. Armont, the seneschal of House Asbury. Basically, the background states that Baroness Elinor Asbury was in his care when Lord and Lady Asbury remanded their child to him. And when the hordes of Temple of Elemental Evil at the Battle of Emerald Meadow descended upon Asbury. And it's a whole little description of... It's a little bit of a background of his character and where he came from and other family members. Okay, at this point, I have a printout that I made for the characters, and this is the ramblings that the Priest of Rayo wrote down from questioning this madman, and I'll let the players look it over and ask Lady Elinor any questions they might have. Who enters the Dark Lady's Beltar's domain? Walk into the dawn of Voltus's reign. Announce before great Celestine star does rise. In the month of radiating, Larg's fang point to the more than skies. When Weejas's mouth opens to swallow you, count Hextor's red arrows to win your way through. Treachery, lies, deceit, and ill fame. Next count the letters in her name. One final turn for all to see, and Trithereon summons comforts thee. Mighty ones those all named above, but a sum that is not a number unlocks this door. Okay, after the party get a chance to read this over and talk among themselves, she will help them as much as she can, and this is what she tells them. We believe that Beltar's domain means a cave, and Beltar is the god of caves and underground. We also believe that the reference to the dawn of Fultus's reign means the location is to the east. Fultus is the god of light and the sun, and it is logical that his reign would begin at sunrise. Finally, announced before Celestine star does rise, seems to refer to sunset, as Celestine is god of night and stars. I am not able to help you any further. So each clue, the party should realize that the clues refer to the gods of Orth that and they could make a religion check to find out about these gods. I could provide them details about each god that they mention here in the poem. My World Anvil articles have a description of each of the gods, so I can assign that article to them or read it to them or have them look at it. And so they'll get information about the gods, and maybe that'll help them solve this riddle. The intention here is not to have the party solve the ritual right now. They still have to go to this madman and question him over in Asbury Manor. And then as they travel east looking for clues to find this location of this lost treasure, the solution to these clues will unveil themselves as they continue further, like Larg's Fang. They'll have no idea what Larg's Fang is all about until they get there, and they'll see that landmark. So don't expect them to actually solve this riddle right now, only to get them going along the path of this adventure. I have a description here of each of the gods that I can share with the party, and I also put next to them their alignment, and that which is a clue to this. It's a clue to this riddle, but I won't tell the party that. I'll let them figure that out on their own. But if you look at it closely, you notice that these alignments are all different, and they're along the alignment axis chart. So it's something to think about. So the sum is not the number that cancel each other's law and chaos, good and evil. The word balance is the key that unlocks the door. But that's farther on at the dungeon. Okay, at that point, after a bunch of questions are answered, she does say that the old man is still alive, and they can meet him at Asbury Manor, where he's being tended. Lady Elinor believes that the same cadre that killed her parents seized the treasure from the manor. They hid it in a place other than the Temple of Elemental Evil, which is why none of it, nor the sword or the gemstone, has ever been recovered. That's an important distinction there. That she believes that why the treasure wasn't recovered at the Temple of Elemental Evil when it was felled by the forces of good. It was taken somewhere else. Also, she relays the information that Asbury is just 2 days' ride to the southeast, near the village of Penwick. She also says that she can also say that she cannot advance them any gold. She cannot advance them any gold, but she can provide horses. Finally, after all the questions, she'll say, "That is the sum of the information we have. It will be my pleasure to have you accompany my party back to Asbury Manor on the morrow. There, you can begin your quest. We will leave at sunrise from this inn." If there's no more questions, the characters can return to their lodgings to make whatever preparations they need for the journey. As they depart, the door again opens, though. So something else happens before they leave. "Your pardon again, my lady. But Lord Millennius asks to remind you that he still awaits your pleasure." Lady Elinor sighs heavily, and then she responds, "Thank you, Roth, and please thank Lord Millennius for his patience. I will see him now." At that point, Lady Elinor will dismiss the party and not answer any further questions. If somebody does show concern, what her problem is right now, that will elicit the following response from Lady Elinor. "I appreciate your concern. I see that I have chosen well. Please be at ease. It is only tedious holding business that must be tended." And then she leaves. At any point that somebody might ask a question to her about the two people outside, that's watching people walk in here, that lord and that rich merchant, she'll comment she'll nod in recognition, and she'll comment with things like, she's very, nobility do not tend to directly answer people subordinates' questions. They're usually pretty cryptic about it.
It's called being polite society. And this is what, instead of saying something bad or any cuss words like normal people would, saying that guy's a dick, she'll say something like this. Seldom, very seldom, does complete truth belong to any human disclosure. Seldom can it happen that something is not a little disguised or a little mistaken. I know little of Lord Bridgeworth besides that his mien is wonderfully lack of wit. Beyond that, he holds a small title here in the city. So that's some vital information she shared with the party and being polite at the same time. And then if pressed further about them again, she'll say, Rayo preaches that a balance between individuality and sociability, a certain regulated interaction between the individuality and the universality, constitutes the first condition for moral well-being. That's really cryptic, but that shows her education. That shows her sophistication and her moral upbringing. Okay, at this point, the party leaves. So they got a lot to think about. I got to back up here. Something really exciting about this. So you remember Vigon, the mercenary, the chosen one of Rayo? You remember what was told to... You remember what was conveyed to him by that priestess about the shining gem and the sword? Well, he might put two and two together and figure this out, hopefully. And he goes, wow, you know what? I think that prophecy has something to do with this. And he might want to return to that monastery and ask further questions to help with this riddle. And when he does return to that monastery, they're going to put two and two together and figure out that madman is one of the missing dignitaries from that mission, the gift of Rayo to Celine, Her Majesty herself, that was lost. It was a raid, and they took this chest of Rayo, and it's been gone since, including the entire delegation. And one of the members of that delegation was a priest of Rayo. And so they might put two and two together if he goes back there, and she'll tell him that this is probably that missing emissary, and she'll demand that he go there and question this and confirm this and send him back to this monastery. So that's going to continue that plot hook, that thread there, right there. Hopefully he catches that. But it doesn't have to be that way. What's great about this long campaign is, you know, if players ever miss any hooks or vital information, this campaign is so long with so many hooks at so many different times over and over and over again that it's constantly in their face as they go through this campaign. I'm not worried about any of them missing anything, because eventually they're going to catch on and they're going to understand things. So I don't let it stress me too much. So the party is going to talk about this riddle, and I'm going to ask them what they're going to do that night before leaving in the morning. Obviously, the priest of Fultus is going to return to his master and tell him everything, you know, what happened and what he wants. And during that role-playing meeting, I'm going to have that bishop demand that he do go with her on this mission to help her with all he can and report everything to the bishop. Same thing with the Wrinkle Academy, the Magister Obelhar. He's going to do the same thing with his the wizard character of the group. He's going to say, go with her, help her with everything you can, give me all the information that you learn, and keep me appraised of the situation. So they're going for few reasons other than just an adventure. And then, of course, the other two are going to go along because they're reasons I gave before. But the mercenary fighter not only is going along for adventure and fame and treasure and get rich, but he's now the chosen one of Rayo, and that might be another motive factor of why he's going to go along. So after all that, after any investigation of these gods, they might want to go to one of the churches. Actually, what happened in my campaign is the priest of Fultus went back to his church to talk to his bishop, and he looked into his libraries and looked up all these gods and did some research. He also did some research on nobles of Viscount. He wanted to find out more about her house, Lord Millennius and his house, and so he got some information. He was really into this campaign, and he actually did a lot of research back at his library at the church to find out what the heck is really going on here. And same thing with Mascus, the wizard. He did the same thing. He went back to his library and learned all he could. So I provided them a lot of information. The other two party members, no, not so. I didn't give them any information at all, except if the mercenary, Vigan, went back to the monastery of Rayo, he actually learned a lot of information about the House of Asbury too, to follow up on that quest that he has. So during all this, something else happens. If I can get one of them alone on the street somewhere,
a man comes out of an alley from the shadows and talks to him. And if I can't get that to happen, I have him approach that person at the inn that they're staying at. But it's usually pretty easy to get somebody alone on the street from an alley. So this is what happens. So this person comes, it's a soft voice from the alley, and this is who they see. So this is one of the agents of the Temple of Elemental Evil. He's working for Lacoste Qualid, that one rich merchant that was in the inn earlier. So at the inn, he saw what was going on. He witnessed that Lady Asbury hired these adventurers to do something important, and they're leaving in the morning. He knows all this. He doesn't know exactly what for, doesn't know the details, but he wants to know. He knows some of it, though. And so he hired this assassin to go after one of the parties to stir the pot, to add confusion, to derail this mission. And that's what he looks like. But he's hidden in the shadows with a hood over his face, so the party members can barely be able to see his face. Well met, friend. A word with you, if I may. So if the character turns and sees this nondescript man wearing a long cloak standing in the shadows, if the player agrees to listen, the man will step forward and say the following. You may have met with Lady Elinor of Asbury Manor and accepted her quest. I have information that might be of use to you. My name is Vershon. Shall I continue? Well, usually a player can't pass that up. So he agrees. So the man steps forward, throws back the hood of his cloak, and you can see a pale complexion with sandy-colored hair. I'll show him that picture I showed you in the article earlier. The Lady Elinor is blessed with a honeyed tongue. She seeks to beguile simple fools into serving her evil ends. A she-devil holds Asbury Manor. The information she has from the old man was wrung from him by means of torture. He was, in fact, one of the remaining members of a group of priests sent to escort the treasure of the Temple of Rao in Valuna to Queen Yolanda of Selene. Yes, the priests were waylaid by orcs en route and managed to hide the treasure before being overwhelmed. The orcs, ignorant of the treasure, slew or captured the priests, forcing those who survived into years of vile torment as slaves. It is a wonder that any part of his mind remained lucid when he finally escaped and stumbled onto Asbury. It is this treasure that she seeks, not the paltry baubles of some bumpkin holding. The treasure belongs to the Temple of Rao. Through the secrecy of the mission to the elves requires that the priests disavow any knowledge of it to those outside their order. It would be better that this treasure disappear forever than to allow the Scarlet Brotherhood to gain any knowledge of the pact. So if the character asks, what pact? The man will just shrug. Of this I may not speak. Even were you to threaten me with violence or death, the lives of too many good and true men hang in the balance. I ask only that you think upon my words. Seek out the seams in the fabric of lies the Lady of Asbury Manor has told you, and make up your own mind. If you decide that the lady is less deserving of the treasure than she seems, it should be an easy matter to convince your fellows to forget your bargain and to disappear with your wealth, enough to spend your lives in luxury. Think well upon this, my friend. Then he steps back into the shadows of the alley and disappears. So this will end Session 1 of the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign starting in the City of Verbobonc. I hope you all enjoyed this. Please write in comments below of anything you think I should have added to this Session 1 to make this more engaging for the players. Or if you have any questions about how I put this all together, please ask away. Also, you can support me on my Patreon. Every supporter I get over there will encourage me to make more of these videos.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Thank you so much. I hope your players enjoy your Temple of Elemental Evil campaign.